nature of it. You know, when you and I spoke, you kind of used that term, and I thought that was quite endearing and, in fact, quite humble that you would call yourself the caretaker. And at
Well,
some point, you're gonna go ahead, Tony.
yeah, Ange, what I'll do is this. Let me just get this all straightened out right now. Okay.
Sure.
20 years ago in 1999, I started the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, and the person that helped me out the most was probably George Steele at the time. And George Steele and I, well, let's go back another step. March 2nd of 2020, a month or so ago, I just finished just short of 25 years with the New York State Athletic Commission as a deputy commissioner. I overseen professional boxing, professional wrestling, and the last few years, professional and amateur MMA. Back in 1999, I was doing a wrestling show at a large venue in upstate New York and Albany. On the card was George Steele. Now,
Right.
I knew George prior to this, so when he worked that show, it was nice to see him. And we had something to eat prior, and I said, look, when the show's over, let's go get something to drink across the street. Okay. So the show finishes. I go across the street, and it was me, him, and I'm not, like I mentioned one time before, guy Johnny Walker Black was with me. And we sat down, and about the time we got about halfway through the bottle there, I was talking to him, and I said, Jim, his real name was Jim Myers. I said, Jim,
Sure.
I said, what is it for you after this is all over? And he said, nothing really. I said, well, isn't there a hall or anything that you can go to? And he said, well, not really. He said they used to have this thing that they would honor us, but they'd give us a plaque, but there was no physical brick and mortar place.
Yeah.
So while we were talking to each other, I think we were just passing time and really just blowing smoke up each other's, what. So I said to him, I said, how about this? If I could start a Hall of Fame in the region here, would you help me do it? Now, mind you, there's 23 Halls of Fame in New York State, and we're the largest state. We're the state with the largest amount of Hall of Fames.
Right.
So I'm in a vicinity of about 7 or 8 of them. I sit on the Boxing Hall of Fame's board of director, as a board of director I'm in my 8th 3-year term. So, and I'm due next year. So like around 24 years. So I knew how to do it. I went to the Baseball Hall of Fame. I went to the Racing Hall of Fame. Not too far away, just over the border, I had the Basketball Hall of Fame. And they were all in the summer and stuff. So we went to all these things, and I knew how to do it.
Sure.
And I knew the people in the wrestling industry. And I had that entrepreneur type of attitude. So I said, I just need someone to open the doors for me. George, you could do this. You could call and tell these people, hey, my friend's going to be calling you. Answer the phone. He's got something that he wants to propose. Maybe we could help him. So that's what he did, actually. And that was like in September.
Right.
Well, December 17th in 1999, I received a letter in the mail from the Board of Regents in New York State, granting me a region. The Regents called me up. They granted me this thing that I could open up a Hall of Fame in New York State for professional wrestling. I called Steele up. Steele said, I can't believe it. He kind of like didn't remember the conversation, but then he did. But true to his word, he really went out there and he pushed it.
Right.
And with the connections that we both had, we were able to open up this Hall of Fame and get this going. Now, that basically was really my thing. I mean, I had people helping me, you know, Mike Capano and Bob Bryla and Johnny Peterson, these guys. And I had these guys helping me out and to move it forward. And I thank God for all of them. But that was really my deal. I ran it until 2016, and I couldn't do it no more. Most of my guys were dying. The ticket seller type of people, like the Killer Kowalskis, the Mays, the Mullahs, Steele, Strongbow.
Sure.
You know,
God, sure.
Yeah, Penny Banner, on and on and on. All these people started dying who used to come to the events, and people would buy tickets to see them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then plus, I was getting tired because for 15 years, I worked 7 days a week, and I don't know many people that could have done that. Can't tell you how many things I missed, how many things I came late to, how many, you know, it was just overbearing after a while.
Oh, I can imagine, Tony.
So after the people started dying off and I started having less and less of them around me, you know, and Bachwinkle and Snuka and all these guys and Lou Albano, these guys were gone and I just didn't know what to do, you know. The newer people I didn't really know.
Yeah.
So I put what they call an RFP, a request for proposal, to different cities and states. Excuse me. And Texas was one of the maybe a half a dozen. And the other ones were too close. I would have never have gotten out. I would have been too close. I would have had to maintain it. So Texas was far enough away from me, more in the central of the United States. I could bring in the West, and plus it was McGirt's old territory. And at that time when McGirt had that territory, if you weren't if you didn't travel his territory, you probably really wasn't in professional wrestling. I mean, you had to pass through. You know, I had the Funks there, and I had over the border the guy from Oklahoma, Danny Hodge, and then I had the Lariat there, Stan Hansen over there. And I said, well, you know, this will work out pretty good for us. Yeah. They accepted it. They liked it. I sent everything over there. And I was out of it. Now, it didn't go the way I would have ran it down there. But the thing about it is people in New York State missed the hall. And I took it kind of like a beating up here for letting it go. But when one day I got a call, and it was last summer. I got a call from a guy named Mike Lanudo, and Mike, our co-host tonight, might enjoy this little story. I was doing a movie. I was an extra in a movie, and that movie was Mob Town with David Arquette that just came out in December, and I played.
I know the film well. Absolutely, I know the film well.
And I played a bodyguard for one of the leading characters. And Mike Lanudo was in the movie, and he asked me if I could meet with him and a person named Seth Turner.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. How did Seth Turner enter the picture?
So Seth Turner used to come to the Hall of Fame in Amsterdam, and he would, bring his family, and he would go and get autographs, and when we were doing signings and stuff like that. Now, I said, you know what? He said, we want to talk to you about setting up a Hall of Fame again in New York State. And I said, well, that was already played out. And they said, well, there's a lot of people that want it back. I think we could bring it back. So I said, We need your guidance. You already went through it. Like, the difference here, Angelo, is when I first did it, I didn't have a playbook or any guidance. I was given a machete and said, "There's the woods. I hope you make it to the other end." And it was very difficult. More doors
Yeah.
closed than opened. It was very difficult. And I made it through, and I was still able to keep a lot of those memories in my head. So I said,
Yeah.
you know what? I could guide you if you want me to. And I said, but I won't do this unless I know you're serious, because I'm not going to put my name out there and have you
Absolutely.
guys walk away. Then you're making me look, because
Well, of
when Mike
course.
earlier, yeah, when Mikey earlier said that he was listening to my speech at the Cauliflower Alley Club, um, I'll get back to that. But what happened was, is he said, Lanudo and Seth said, "Can you meet us at a diner in Catskill, New York?" Which is an hour away from me. And I'm saying, here I am driving an hour to go do something I already did for 20 years. I really didn't have a lot of incentive to want to do this. But the fact that, he was a friend of mine. I met him on the set. I said, I wasn't doing anything. It was Sunday morning. I said, all right, I'll come. So we went down there, sat down, and we talked. And I told them what they had to do first. They had to go to the border regions. They had to ask the border regions. They'll send you some stuff that you have to do. You do that first, then call me, because that'll at least show me your commitment. So about a month later, they call up and said, "We did it. We got the thing. You gave me the charter." And it was kind of funny. It was a couple months after it, really. But it was kind of funny because 20 years to the day was December 17th, 2019. They got the charter on December 10th, 2019.
Right.
Almost 20 years to the day. And so I said, God's guiding me here. Maybe I should do this, and maybe I should try to bring it back. So I told him, I said, well, you know what? I'm in. But to clarify, and this was started this story, I didn't want to be part of it. I just
Yeah.
wanted to guide it. I said, look, you're the president, Seth. This other guy, Mike, he's the vice president. They got Andy Goff as a secretary. They had this guy, Joe DeFino, and they had the lawyer, Mike Viscosi. And all these people were all set up, and they already told me what they're going to do. And so they gave me like a title. But I said, look, let me stick my face out there. No one knows who you are. Maybe you could do to me like what I did with George Steele. We could get this thing maybe off the ground. And
Right.
it took off. It took off like a rocket ship. And we went for a physical location in Catskill about 3-4 weeks ago.
Right.
And it was a beautiful location, and everything was looking good. But then they had a small core group come up against it. And that's where they are right now, trying to fight,
Yeah.
to try to
You
get
could
that
always
place
come
or
to
another place.
Richmond. The Mid-Atlantic area loves wrestling.
Well,
Yeah.
that brings up something you said earlier, Tony, about the demand for the Hall of Fame to be in this area, the general East Coast area. Our area, and I'm sure because you've been involved in this business for the better part of almost 50 years, that the greater New York area, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, this entire area is steeped rich in wrestling history. It just makes sense to me from a historical standpoint that it should be in this area. If not New York, then certainly Philadelphia or somewhere in New Jersey. Perhaps Atlantic City in one of the hotbeds of tourism. But
Atlantic
Yeah.
City.
Now the only thing about that is you got to make sure that you have people that'll man it and work it. Yeah, you can start it anywhere you want to start it, but who's going to be staying there and working it? I was so devoted that I worked every day. I mean, I was involved every single day,
oh, I
and
know.
it just ate me up, you know.
Yeah.
But you need someone to stay there. So the reason why they were looking at Catskill was a couple of reasons. One, those guys are from there. You know,
Yeah.
two, they didn't have an attraction. Their biggest thing is Mike Tyson trained atop of the police department and a gym up on that side. That's where he was from.
Yeah.
But really, they needed an attraction, and they didn't have one. You know, and you never do a Hall of Fame in a big city. No Hall of Fames are really in a big city. There might be one or two, but
Why
most of
is
them
that,
are,
Tony? That's a real good point you bring
you
up.
can't afford it. You can't afford it, and no one, and, you know, you can't afford it, and you have to have people to man it, and you have to pay for them if they do that, and you just can't. You want to get block grants, you want to get facade grants, you want to get some kind of grants. You get them easier from a town that has nothing going for it, or it's slow, or it doesn't have attractions, than you would be if I went to New York City. You have to pay $2,000 for a broom closet space in New York
Basically,
City.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. You know,
I was
Tony,
paying that for a flat in Chelsea in the 80s.
I was getting that building in Amsterdam for $1 a year, and I had 4,500 square feet. We cut the deal in Texas for 7,500 square feet for $15 a year. I'm not going to get stuff like that in a big city. It just ain't happening. Look, you got to remember, when you go to a small city, you need police. To bring people there, you need police force because you want to be safe. You need business because you want to work. You need a school system because you want your family to go to school in a good school. And you need attractions, and that's where we came in. We're a great attraction for them. But you don't open up every day because people are not coming to your Hall of Fame during the day because they're working. And during the school week, no one's coming out at night. So we got weekends. You're usually good from Friday to maybe Sunday, that type of thing. And that's what really you're not a big employer, and you're a 501c3, so you're a tax exempt. But basically, the city wants to say they're the home of the Hall of Fame. We used to put on a street fair. We would draw 10,000 people to our inductions. We would bring in like people. We had all kinds of tents and stuff and street fairs. We had those things, but because I got it into their head, it doesn't have to always be wrestling. It could be other things. Come on down and visit the car show. Let's do this. Let's do that. You end up doing a 5K run, a golf outing, a parade. You can make all this thing happen and bring this to this community, and people can go to their community. And you've got car rentals, hotels, boutiques, restaurants that are all of a sudden get this weekend boom that they never had before.
Yeah. Tony, let me ask you a question. When you announced that the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame would be a real thing, did you get any cooperation or assistance from the wrestling industry itself, other than certain individuals?
Not really. It was more individuals. But again, it's in this industry, it's always them looking outside into the windows, into the glass at you inside. And they stay there until they feel that everybody's going inside, and then they'll come in afterwards.
Yeah.
They won't jump in right off the bat with 2 feet. You almost got to prove yourself all the time. And no, you don't. But this
how many of those people, though, Tony, said, you know what? Yeah, I really believe in this idea, and I'm willing to write you a check.
I had a lot of independents. Like the independents locally on the East Coast, they all pretty much signed up or said, hey, I'd like to help you out, whatever you need, blah, blah, blah. And I would work their shows, and they would come up to me and say, hey, I'm so happy you're bringing this back. You're doing this, you're doing that. And I was kind of like the face of the Hall of Fame. And I'm really, got to be honest with you, I'm not the face of the Hall of Fame. It's Seth Turner and his group. I'm on that board. I was on that board. I kind of like don't want to be on the board. I just want to be on the. Hey, I'm going to be 70 years old in a couple of months. I don't want to put 20 more years in. I'll sign
Sure.
the contract to give me 20 more years for life. I mean, I want to be 90. I want to make 90.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have 20 more years left. But
Well,
these
I
guys
should
do.
point out in full disclosure to everyone listening, Tony Vellano and I had a private conversation where he expressed to me that the time, energy, and effort that he put into this literally at some points made him physically sick because of the sheer amount of time and hours involved.
Yeah.
And at the time you and I spoke, Tony, we should also say in full disclosure, you were recovering from surgery at the time, and I hope you're, at doing a bit better than you were. You were in a lot of pain the last time we spoke.
And while I had the Hall of Fame, I also had 15 outlets of my business, 130 people that I employed, 7 states I was in, and I'm working that Monday through Friday in the Hall of Fame on the weekends. I'm missing families, weddings, picnics, birthdays, basketball games, football games, grandkids stuff, all of that because of my dedication to it. And when all my
Yeah.
friends in the business started dying, the ones like I named to you, it wasn't as fun as it was, and it started getting repetitive. It started, everything was being, well, I got time to do this, time to do that, time to do this. It got to be repetition. And I'm saying, well, shit, anybody could do this now. And so what I did was I said, it's time for me to go. And it's in my lease was going to be up in another year anyway. And so I
Right.
said, you know what? It's time for me to close this up, move it to some place where I could bring in the West Coast, move it someplace in the center. Went over Texas, the building there, 7,500 square feet. The guy gave us a good deal. Texas was looking for an attraction, and the rest is history with that. So we come
Yeah.
back. Everybody's upset. A couple of years go by. They want the new hall. Turner and his group come up and said, look, no one knows us. No one knows, we don't know what to do or how to start it. Can you at least come out, be the face of the hall, give us some guidance? We'll work it. We'll do it. We'll do the fundraising. We'll try to do that. And I said, sure, I'll stay with you for a year or two. But after that, I said, I already did this. To me, it's all old hat already. And to get back to the Cauliflower Alley thing, when I was out for the 3 years, and this was the only thing that used to bother me is that I put so much effort in. I did something that no one else did in the world. I did something against a $1 billion corporation and pulled it off. When it moved to Texas, after the time I brought it there and I came back, I had no communication with them from that day on. So I said, well, here I am, someone that did what no one else ever did, got it credible, all this other stuff. And now it's like I became a footnote in pro wrestling history. So I said, well, I guess that's just the way it is. And I was sitting out in this boat. It was like in the ocean just drifting. When Brian Blair drives by, Hooks says, "Hey, Tony," hooks a hook to me and takes me to shore and calls me up in one day and said, "You know what? We had a unanimous vote. We want to give you a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Cauliflower Alley Club." Now, I recognize the Cauliflower Alley Club as the largest and most recognized organization in professional wrestling.
Absolutely.
To be recognized them and being put in the class of 219, it was like my swan song. It was like putting the final end to what I just went through, and at least I got recognized by the largest organization internationally.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, and so
And
that's
deservedly
what,
so.
well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone that told me that, because I'm the most ignorant to the following. I've just got my head to the grindstone, and I'm
Yeah.
doing what I can do to keep this thing going. And
Well, Tony, where
when
did
they,
your passion for wrestling start? Did that start as a kid?
no, that's the joke. I didn't even like it. I didn't even know anything about it. See, if you knew me, especially from the beginning, that was the joke. That the president of the hall, the guy who pulled it off, was the guy who knew the least. And I told him, I said, but that's how I did it, because I had the business sense. I knew how to start businesses. And I was in the wrestling business through the athletic commission.
Right.
And I knew, and I live around all these halls of fame. And I said, well, you know what? That's a hat trick. Somebody like me could pull this off if I had somebody like Steele blocking for me. I'm carrying the ball, but I need a blocker.
Yeah.
And he was why. He was the guy, and he opened it all up. He brought most of those guys when they all started coming in. And listen, let me tell you something. You have to do it right, and you have to put it on real good, and you have to put it on to the point where you have to treat them like they've never been treated before. You have to understand, when you're a pro wrestler, okay, and you deal with some kind of promoter, you're not usually treated well. You're usually taken advantage of. You're flying coach. You're getting, if he even takes you out, he tells you to keep it under $10. You're sleeping in a Motel 6. You know, you're not treated well. Well,
Right.
I flipped the coin and I treated them like they really meant something to us.
Yeah.
And they all did. And when they left, they couldn't believe it. So my motto was this. My motto was, listen, how you put it on is how they talk about it when they leave.
Absolutely.
If I put it on shitty, that's how they're going to talk about it. But if I put it on really good and make them feel like they're really important, that's how they're going to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And that's what I did. And I made sure that that's what I did.
And you did a splendid and magnificent job. Tony, I want to open it up to questions from our resident filmmaker, Mike Messier. Mikey, go ahead.
Hi, Tony. It's great hearing your story. A lot of questions come to mind, but I guess for the people that are out there that might want to visit your Hall of Fame, my first question would be, how does it work? Do they go to your physical brick and mortar address now in New York, and how much is a ticket, and what does that get them? Is it like a tour, or you just kind of tour yourself? Is there a gift shop? What can the paying customer expect when he or she goes to your Hall of Fame there in New York, Tony?
Well, when we had the Hall of Fame in New York, we set it up with everything that you mentioned. They took a tour, they had a gift shop, they had all of that. But we only did this only 4 months ago, 5 months ago. People don't understand that I only got the charter in December of '99. So with Christmas and New Year's, these holidays and Easter, You know what I mean? That ate up a lot of the day. So really, if you think about it, it's only been 4 months. What happened in 4 months in New York State with this new hall? Well, you set up a Facebook page that's going up to 3,000 people soon. You've set up a store on the Facebook. Well, really, it's on the website, which is IPWHF.org, International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame.org, which Anthony Rotolo was a friend of ours. He set all of that up. He set the thing up. Right now, there's no physical brick and mortar place to attend, but there's a raffle going on right at this moment. Go ahead.
Camera.
Well, we had a lot of people stepped up. We had J.J. Dillon did an autograph signing for us in Syracuse and in Albany.
Yeah,
then I had
sure did.
We had 2 wrestling shows on the same night that were donating us money, and this virus canceled it. Then we had our, and then we had our induction, our inaugural dinner, which is on May 16th.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, that got canceled as well. The place where we held it or holding it, they canceled out on us. And that was 3-4 weeks ago. And we had 200 tickets sold at that time.
Okay, so
I remember.
And we had to refund most everything.
What I'm hearing, Tony.
They let us hold.
Yeah, well, I was going to say what I'm hearing is that some of the guys I know involved in that are telling me sometime now in June, possibly as late as July.
As far as what?
As far as that inaugural dinner.
Yeah, well, it may be the fall. I don't know. It's like all up in the air right now. We were supposed to be done with this by now, and now it's moving over to May. And the kids, even in school here, they can't even go back to the middle of May yet. So how this all plays out, and we all get back to our lives again. But we had to cancel like 4 fundraisers. So now we said, well, we'll use the internet. So Seth Turner was friends with Rocky Johnson, and Dwayne is Rock's son.
Yeah.
And he gave Seth one of his shirts, workout shirts and stuff, and that's for raffle right now. For $10 you could buy a ticket. You could buy as many tickets as you want. You send a check or money order to IPWHF.org to the P.O. Box in Catskill, which you could pick up on the website, and you could enter this. You could enter this raffle to win Rock's shirt. Now,
absolutely,
we're trying to figure ways to raise money, and instead of being dormant.
Oh, absolutely. Look, if there's any way we can help you, so let me know.
Exactly.
Absolutely right, and that's just getting a hold of Seth Turner through the Facebook page and telling them that you want to be part of it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I have to tell you, a couple of the hitters with the IPWHF are friends of this show. J.J. Dillon, of course, was here with our buddy Davey O'Hannon just last week, talking about
those two are like my best. Those two are like my best friends. Like J.J. Dillon, he's the one that introduced me at the Cauliflower Alley Club because I didn't want anybody else. And Davey O'Hannon, 3 weeks ago, I visited with him for a couple of days.
Yeah,
these people were there. These people, they were there from the beginning for us.
Yeah, and he told me you stole the towels out of the Borgata Hotel.
Nice. Who hasn't stolen hotel towels?
If you're gonna go big.
Exactly.
But,
right.
No, that's just that's a rib.
Well, Tony, we got a question for you from Grimlina. Go ahead, Grimmy.
Well, I'm impressed, and a couple of things. I know several WWE Hall of Famers, Pro Wrestling Hall of Famers. And I think it would be nice. What criteria gets you into a Hall of Fame?
Good question.
Well, that's all being set up, and it has been set up. It just hasn't been published yet. Bob Gryla wrote all our rules and regulations for the one for the PWHF, and that's in Texas right now, and the one that was in Amsterdam here, and it ran for 20 years now with the same rules and regs. So when we started this, I called Bob. I said, Bob, this is going to be a little twist because now there's an international flavor. And so, Bob, can you write something up for us? And he's been working on it for the last couple of months, and he gave us one of the final drafts about a week or so ago. Very intricate, but I'll break it down generically for you. What they basically do is they have a set of he wants eventually 100 selectors, but right now we're at 50 because I didn't want it to get too crazy. As the hall grew, I wanted him to then start growing the selector pool. And what we do out of that 50, we take 30 to 40 of them and we send them a ballot to vote on. Now, the selection committee is a committee of like 3 people. There's one of the 3 are the chairman. So they don't have voting power.
Right.
And they come and they put together a ballot. When they put the ballot together, they decide they'll send it to the board of directors of the hall, and the hall looks at it, they approve it, and then they send it out to 30 to 40 of the 50 selectors. Okay, just because you're a selector doesn't mean you may not vote that year. And I really don't, I like to switch them because I don't want some guy to say, hey, I'm going to be able to put so-and-so on this year. Or, hey, let's get together and let's vote as a voting
Thinking about how to stuff a ballot box.
Say that again, Grimmy?
I said, thinking on how to stuff a ballot box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah, we
let's
don't allow that. That's why when we send you stuff, your ballot, we send you your ballot anonymously. You don't know you're getting one. And then when you finally get it, you do your voting and it comes back to the selection committee, okay? And when the selection committee receives, and they're the 3 people, when they receive the ballots and they see that there might be a tie on 1 or 2, that's the only time that they have the right to vote. And only the 2, not the chairman, only the 2 vote. Now, if they can't break the tie because one votes for one votes the other, that's the only time selection chairman votes to break the tie.
Makes sense.
I put a lot of thought into this when I put this together years ago.
Yeah,
and it seems to work for 20. Yeah,
I was ribbing you
for 20 years.
I was ribbing you about stuff in the ballot box.
Well, we like you to be like a certain age. When we did the other one, you had to be like 50. You had to have at least 20 years in the business. You had to at least become notable in the business. I mean, we didn't want to look. Listen, everybody's talking about territorial. Well, what if I was territorial and I spent 40 years territorial? Well, did you ever do a WrestleMania, or did you ever travel to Japan, or did you go to Australia? Did you win any big national titles? We didn't want to see a guy with a belt over his shoulder said he was a heavyweight champion and never traveled more than 50-mile radius. Those things, that didn't work for me.
Well, Tony, let me ask you a question along those lines. Grimmy mentioned, kind of jokingly, tongue in cheek, but I'm going to pick up on a serious note where she left off. There's one man in Stamford, Connecticut, that is the ballot box. His name's Vince McMahon.
I know that one.
And can that Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, as it's called, be considered in any shape or capacity a legitimate pro wrestling Hall of Fame, in your opinion?
Listen, let me tell you something about the McMahons. They're four generations. Goes back to Jess McMahon, who was put it promoting in Madison Square Garden, and then his son, Senior, then his grandson, Junior, and now his great grandson, the kid. Now their business stayed. Their business cyclical, up and down. They put a Hall of Fame. Their Hall of Fame, to me, is more to produce revenue, not to honor the industry. And the reason why we did it, and they're a for-profit Hall of Fame. It's a different story. That's a for-profit. We're a not-for-profit. I went back to before the 1900s, before WWE, before television. Their Hall of Fame only puts in WWE people that worked for them, that type of thing. I put in Strangler Lewis, Hackenschmidt, Londos, all those people that were before the WWE. You know,
Absolutely.
You're not going to see Argentino Rocca. You're not going to see, you're not going to see Dick Murdoch. You're not going to see all those type of guys that were really, you're not going to see George Gordienko. You're not going to see those type of guys. We took it seriously. We had a series of a bunch of historians that put this ballot together and go back. When we had the Hall of Fame in Amsterdam, my oldest piece that I displayed was 1870.
Wow.
He doesn't have that.
No, not even close.
Right, and he doesn't have a brick and mortar. Now, you got to understand, for him to put a brick and mortar together, and he wanted to try to do that in Orlando, and then he even thought about doing it in Vegas and stuff like that. Look what he has to buy. Look what he has to build. Look who he has to employ. He has all of that stuff, and that is mucho dollars. That is why the small towns and villages, that's where you go, because they'll give you a building for free.
Well, Tony, I never understood how a guy that's got literally three warehouses filled with wrestling memorabilia doesn't have a brick and mortar Hall of Fame. The guy's got literally three warehouses filled with priceless, and I mean in some cases priceless, wrestling history.
I've seen him. Ben Brown is the head of all of that stuff over there. He's an employee there. He's a great guy. He came up to our Hall of Fame. Believe me, WWE, especially in the beginning, they sent carload people up to check me out, check out what we were doing, the whole 9 yards. Now, did he help us out? No. But in a way he did, because he could have wiped me out anytime he wanted to. I didn't have a legal department where they could say, I just want you to devote your time on wiping them out.
Right.
We have WWF stuff on display. We got WWE stuff on display. We got WCW on display. We got ECW on display. He owns all those things.
He sure does.
I didn't have an entry fee, because in the very beginning, if I went at an entry fee and I'm displaying their stuff, technically I had to give them a percentage of it. Their cut for displaying their stuff.
Yeah,
now, if I just did it as display and didn't have an entry fee coming in and just put a donation box as they left, then that was, but to his credit, and I thank him all the time for this, is that he had a lot of wrestlers that too old to wrestle or injured to wrestle. he kept on his payroll. Okay, now
Yeah.
what he did by keeping on his payroll, he still owned them technically. He owned their rights.
Yeah.
Now I'm inducting them into the Hall of Fame. Tony, I'll come if Vince releases me. So Moolah, May, DiBiase, Strongbow, Graham, all these guys, Roddy Piper, all these people we
Ivan
put into the
Koloff.
Hall. Koloff, they all had to ask to be released.
Right.
If they could
Absolutely.
come to the event. And he allowed every single guy to come. He never held anybody back. He could have said no, and that would have been a big dent in my ticket sales. And plus, it would have looked bad for me. Plus
Absolutely.
it looked like I'm being owned by this guy. So financially, did he support me financially? Yes and no. He didn't give me money, but he didn't hurt me by bringing these people in to sell tickets for that event. And
Yeah.
I financially got the money that way.
Mike Messier, go ahead.
Well, I guess what I'm learning tonight, Tony, from your story, is that if someone like yourself or anybody has a good thing going, as you did, originally in New York, then don't let it go. I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting from this conversation in your story, that you had the Hall of Fame there in New York, and for whatever reason, internal, external reasons, you kind of let it slip out of your fingers, but now you're kind of reclaiming your hold on it. And I guess what I'm learning here tonight is that if you have something that's working, don't mess with it. Am I on the right path of that, you think, or what?
Nah, you're not even close. The thing about it, Mike, it never slipped out of my hand. I had it the whole time, and I could have went anywhere I wanted with it. I
Okay.
just got tired. I got tired. I got tired because I had nobody step up and take my place. I
Yeah,
asked
he
the
was
board
doing
members
everything
that I had.
himself. Yeah.
Listen, I can't tell you how many times I had to go there and shovel snow, or how many gallons of Windex that I used, or how many hours of vacuuming that I did. And whenever I got somebody to come help me, they're expecting to see Hulk Hogan there, and Hulk Hogan doesn't come there. And when I tell them to go vacuum or go dust, they get kind of disillusioned and they leave.
Yeah.
No, listen, when it left, I couldn't have been any happier.
Yeah.
But let me tell you a little story. When I decided to leave it, and when I decided to cut the deal with Wichita Falls, and they were all happy about it, and everything was going on really well there, I had to close it up in Amsterdam. Now, it was a surprise to them as well because I still had time on my lease. Well, here's how bad it got as people not wanting to help. They only want to listen. They only want to come in and tell you what to do, but they don't want to help you do it. They think that you have
Exactly.
time enough to do it. They're all bosses and they all telling you how to run stuff, but they
Yeah.
never come in. Now I had to close the place up. I had to pack the place up. The only person that helped me in a month, it took me a month to do it. The only person that helped me was my wife. We packed 880 boxes, over 30,000 pounds of stuff I sent to Wichita Falls, and I gave
Yeah.
them upper
He's
upper eight
talking about
figures
literally truckloads.
Yeah.
truckloads,
Yeah.
and I gave them upper five figures of money to start them off. I literally sent everything over there: display cases,
Yeah.
mannequins, all kinds of stuff. I had complete control of it. There wasn't anything that, if I wanted to stay there and still be miserable, I could have. It never slipped out of my hands.
Yeah.
The only thing about it is that people wanted it back, the people that attended it on the East Coast. But I said, okay, why don't you start it and I'll help you start it so I can get out of it, and you'll still have your Hall of Fame. You'll be happy, and we're all happy. I don't have to do it anymore. Why do I have to, after 20 years, prove myself? I was the only guy around that did it. And if you look at what
Exactly.
I did, you'll see how many Halls of Fames popped up after I did that. You got the one in New
Exactly.
England that pops up. You got all these on the internet that pops up. You got like Indiana or Indianapolis Hall of Fame. You got them in
Yeah.
Florida now. All these people popped up after I broke the barrier.
I want to tell you, Tony, if you're not aware of it, I did a little homework today, and these numbers are real. In the continental United States right now, there are 724 professional wrestling halls of fame in some form or fashion.
Whoa.
724 in the continental U.S.
And there wasn't any at one time. So let
Right.
me tell
Now-
you this. Let me bring you up a little bit farther. There's a guy, Craig Bradley, from Scotland.
Yeah.
Who sent me something a couple months ago and told me how me doing what I did with the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame gave him the incentive to do it in Scotland. Today, right now, you could walk into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame of Scotland, and he's the curator. They hold inductions, the whole 9 yards, all because of what we did here.
That's remarkable. That's it. Tony, is it the political climate here? Is it that the fact that a Hall of Fame is so damn political to get together, or do you feel like you have to appease everyone? What's the?
Oh, here's the deal right now. Let's talk about present time. You're not going to get crap because all the money that's being spent right now is being spent to keep small businesses afloat and people to eat and not lose their homes and houses. No one's going to sit there and be broke and on unemployment and say, and some politician saying, you know what? I know you guys are having a hard time. I know the farmers are starving. I know that these guys' business had to close. But what if I give the Hall of Fame, Wrestling Hall of Fame, $20,000? Do you think that would go over well?
No.
Nah, it'd go over as well as a fart in church.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's the worst climate for that to happen right now. Because even after their budgets have been passed, and in the beginning of the year is when you want to grab all their money, because a lot of them don't have it at the end of the year. They get their money at the beginning of the year for their budgets. And so, like, if you didn't get the money now, you're not going to get it for a while. And you need that money. That's why you have to self-raise it. So we went out there and tried to self-raise it.
Yeah.
Then they had a national shutdown. And I can't, how can you have a signing and they're 6 feet apart?
Yeah.
You want to hear
it's
a stupid
crazy.
story?
It really is kind of crazy.
Tony, Angela, I think Alan had a question.
Alan has a question for you, Tony.
Sorry.
Hey, Tony, you may have mentioned or touched on this before. I was just kind of curious. From the other Hall of Fame groups that are out there, like maybe my question would be like Cauliflower Alley Club. Have you had any support or help from any of them at all from what you're working on?
Cauliflower Alley Club, I was actually a board member or board director member as well when I was with the Hall of Fame. They would come to every single induction, and they would donate $1,000 to every single induction. We would have them in part of the agenda. Part of the agenda was bringing up people that had money to donate to the hall. Yeah. And the Cauliflower Alley Club was one of them. And that consisted of Carl Lauer and Nick Bockwinkel. The two of those people would come up all the time. And now lately it was, in my final years, was Brian Blair.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if they still do it with the one in Texas, but they were very supportive. In fact, the very first Hall of Fame induction I did, Killer Kowalski, Butcher Vachon, Carl Lauer, Nick Bockwinkel. They all came up and went to the induction to check me out. Me and those guys were like two dogs meeting each other for the first time. Okay? And they were wondering what I was all about, and I didn't know who the hell the Cauliflower Alley Club was.
Yeah.
But I knew that they were important. Now, you must understand, too, I'm in Albany, right?
Right.
The Cauliflower Alley Club was started by a man named Mike Mazurki,
Yeah.
who was a wrestler and movie star. Mike, maybe you remember him at all. He did a lot. He did Dick Tracy. He did a lot of Disney movies. He was on Adam's Club. He had that gangster face. Well, he's from Cohoes, which is Albany, New York. And he started that back in, I think, 1968. Originally, it was for boxers, wrestlers, and Screen Actor Guild members. Because back then, they used to have, like, Archie Moore would come, and Carmen Basilio would come. Those all type of guys. But it morphed just into wrestling. And now they're trying to bring maybe some, movie guys back and this and that. But pretty much predominantly is wrestling. But to answer Alan's question is, they were very supportive from day one, and they would give us $1,000 a year.
Good.
Tony, you mentioned Mike Mazurski. I should point out to everyone that Mike Mazurski's famous cauliflower ear is the logo.
Is their emblem.
Of the Cauliflower Alley Club. He also you can see Mike Mazurski featured prominently in the film Pocket Full of Rainbows with Betty Davis and Glenn Ford. Great. It's a great holiday film.
He was in tens, he was into tens of movies, 40, 50, 60, I don't know how many. He was quite an actor. They liked his look. He was friends with John Wayne, and he worked a lot with John Wayne.
Yeah.
John Wayne.
It's funny because there was another well-known wrestler that was in that movie, Pocket Full of Rainbows, the Swedish Angel. You remember him, Tony? The Swedish Angel?
Of course. He had that face.
He had a face only a mother could love, as Gorilla Monsoon would say. But Mike Messier.
If I'm not mistaken, the Swedish Angel was the prototype for Shrek.
Absolutely, he sure was.
Nice.
Yeah, they made this guy could speak 5 languages. He was in a lot of movies. He was a great wrestler. He had this disease that he didn't have when he was young, but it started like I think in his teens, and then I used to display what do they call it? They had they made a cast of his head. I had his cast, and there was a story. He had a friend of his that was a lifelong friend, and he was like a manager or something. And when the Swedish Angel died, they both got sick at the same time. He died, and I think it was only like hours before the other guy died, and they're buried in the same place together.
Yeah.
Like it was I had some story that was about it. I read it, but I couldn't like pinpoint it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was very, very interesting. But he's Shrek.
Yeah. Mike Messier, go ahead.
Tony, what can people do now to support you and the upcoming Hall of Fame that you'll be putting together in the near future once this worldwide nightmare runs its course? What can people do in the meantime to get involved or get more information? Is there a Facebook page, a website you want to tell everybody about?
Yeah. We have a Facebook page that is approaching. Well, we've only had it for 4 months, and it's approaching. It's approaching. Well, at the end of this month, January, February, March, April. Yeah. So 3.5 months we've had it, but we have approaching 3,000 people on it already. So get on that, like it, and follow everything we do. and our
3,800.
our other thing, our page is IPWH.org, IPWH.org, and there's a store that you could buy hats and shirts and stuff and mugs and things like that. And we're going to be putting online raffles on, and with the online raffles, support that. Send your money into for these raffles.
Absolutely.
We can't have a wrestling show because how do you put people 6 feet apart from each other at a wrestling show?
Well, Tony, that's a real good point. Let me ask you a question along those lines. All the wrestling promotions right now are running what's called empty arena matches. What are your thoughts on that whole notion?
My thoughts on this is it's very creative, and I'll tell you why I think that. Because if they didn't do that to try to survive, they'd be dead. They're trying to survive, and they're coming up out of the box of ways to do it. Do I like to go to a show and no one's there? Idiotic. Would you, as a wrestler, not be able to want to slap hands in the front row as you're walking in, or walking out, or even yell at one of these fans during the middle of the match? You took it all away from them. All of that's done. But if you could stream it and still make money through the stream, and at least make enough to keep yourself going, these people, you got to listen. What got me was they're not essential, so they shouldn't be able to do it. I'd like to meet the guy who says who's essential and who's not essential, because let me tell you, his wife, his kids, his mortgage, his car payment is pretty essential to him.
Absolutely.
Why do you tell me I can't do this? I have to have this money. I got to get this cash. I got to pay these bills. They'll take my car. They'll take my house. My kids got to eat. How come you tell me I'm not essential? That's really essential to my 8-year-old.
I absolutely agree with you, brother. Absolutely. Grimlina, go ahead, kid.
About these empty arena shows, speaking from myself as a worker, I fed off the crowd. I needed that energy to give me that little extra oomph to bring out whatever I was bringing out.
The best of you.
The best of me, or the nastiness of me. The more I heard boos or Grimlino sucks, or you suck, Grimlino, or whatever, the harder I became, the meaner I became, and it was pivotal to get the adrenaline going. But that's not what I really wanted to say. The fact is, being a woman in this man's sport that I was, have you inducted or plan to induct any women into the International Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. 20 years I did it. But what we did for 20 years, we put in the June Byers, we put in the Donna Cristantellos, the Penny Banners, the Tony Roses, we put all of those type of people in. Wendy.
Awesome.
They had a whole section for lady wrestlers on the other.
Oh, awesome.
Moolah, May. We put
Ann
all
Casey.
of those. Ann didn't get in yet, and to me, being president, I had to stay out of it. I didn't have a vote. But I think Ann Casey deserves to be in there. Ann Casey is a badass. She should have been in there.
Absolutely.
Read her biography. I was a truck driver. I was shot how many times?
Right.
I mean, this girl, bad dude, man, and she was a champion. She was out of Moolah's group there, and she may not have had the best relationship with them, but she was still, I think, what was she, an AWA champion or something like that? But she should have been. If she's not in it, she hasn't been in it yet, but I think she should be in. But that's up to the historians. And that's what, being the head of it, I always had them do it because I didn't want to get involved into it, because everybody would come up to me and say, how come you don't have so-and-so in? How come you don't have so-and-so? I said, well, that's because they weren't voted in yet. But, maybe they will. Listen, when our categories are like men, women, tag teams, international. We started off with midgets, even with the midgets, things like that. We would have, even with the men,
woman, midget. Yeah, I meet some of the criteria.
we broke it down to like pioneer era, TV era, modern era, things like that. And we would take one or two out of like each era, something like that. But with the midgets, in the beginning, it was kind of tough because we couldn't sustain that category every year. There wasn't enough to put them in.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, after you put the big ones in, the Skylo Lows and things like that, after you put those
Little Beaver.
I mean, Little Beaver, Lord Littlebrook.
Sure.
After you get all those, after you put those people in, who else do you put in? You couldn't carry the category.
Well, that ties into a question I have, Tony. Put your wrestling fan hat on for a second and answer this for me from your perspective. What happened to all of our characters, brother? What happened to all the great characters in wrestling?
There are no characters. There's storylines now. Listen, if Killer Kowalski was wrestling today, he would turn over. Actually, he's probably turning over his grave. Don't you remember years ago, there would be two people wrestling for an hour, 2 out of 3 match, 20-minute time limit. You only needed two guys, and they wrestled the whole time. There was no like this. Nowadays, they get in the ring, he grabs a microphone and he talks. Then the next guy gets in the ring, he grabs the microphone and he talks. You hit me, you bump into me, I bump into you, and then somebody comes in from outside the ring, pushes you, you leave the ring, go back, he leaves the ring, go back. 20 minutes is wasted, and there was no wrestling.
Exactly.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Nobody in the years before, they never left the ring. They left the ring only to run away from the guy beating them up, and then he would run to the other side and slide back in. But no one went into the crowd. No one went into
the Flair, the Steamboat match.
Tony, I got a question for you. Why did it take so long for Bruno Sammartino to be recognized as the accomplished star that he was?
He had problems, so every time they wanted to recognize him, I'm taking it you said WWE, right? Because we recognized him the very first year.
Yeah.
Listen, I recognized him the very first year. He just didn't come. He was type of guy in the beginning. It was the one with the nose on the glass, like I told you. Wanted to see whether or not this thing would go because he was such a star. He didn't want to get into something that would fail. And I didn't blame him,
Sure.
But with the WWE, I guess he had problems with the hierarchy. And until he straightened that out, he didn't want to be part of that. He wasn't, and he has that Italian bullness. He's, he was like, I'm not going to do it. So it was just the way it was. But with us, and I'm asking you to Google this, go look at Bruno Sammartino's acceptance speech for the PWHF. When we into about 8 years, 9 years passed, or 10 years passed from when we tried to put him in. He wouldn't come. He wouldn't come. After we established and started getting established, and he started hearing all his friends talk good about it, and his best friend, Dominic DeNucci, was getting inducted, he called me up and he said, Tony, I want to induct Dominic, and I want to come to receive my ring. Well, I said, sure, fine with me, and I'm going to ride up with all these guys from Pittsburgh. I said, that'd be great, man. I appreciate that. And he came up, and he wanted to talk and say something special about the hall and what he thought of it. It's on YouTube.
Yes.
It's Bruno Sammartino's induction speech, Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, IPWHF. It is mind-blowing.
When JJ and Dave Yohannan were here with me last week, they talked about a trip that the three of you made to Pittsburgh to Rico's restaurant.
Yeah, he's the best. But listen, two out of three already told you.
Yeah.
let's take another question.
What happens on the road stays on the road.
Go ahead, Grimmy.
And learn something new. Hey, listen, I had a lot of fun on the road with those guys. I vacationed with them. I mean, and I'm talking like all that group of wrestlers, not only just those two, but I vacationed with them. I worked with them. I went to dinners with them. I had dinner with them. I drank with them. I mean, I had an education that they gave me. It was just, God, listen, whenever I was with those people, I never really talked. God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Exactly.
And when I talked, I was talking about something I already knew. But when I listened, I was learning new things. And those people would tell me things that I couldn't believe. And we took a trip one time. It was me, Moolah, May, and George Steele going to Toronto. And I
heard about
3
that.
days. I'd
like to be the fly in that car.
Yeah, I actually heard about that trip.
Oh, man.
I cried, man. I cried. It was like I can't tell you what a great time it was and all the things and how many times we got lost in the rainstorms.
Yeah.
And, I mean, just all the shit that happened, that you want to remember, But then again, I've always had that fun in another sport. I always had that fun with boxing. There's a little known fact out there that a lot of people don't know is that I have 2 other brothers. Well, one died a year ago, but when the 3 brothers, my father was kind of a player, not around that much. So we were raised pretty much with my mother, and and she had to raise these 3 boys. We ended up in 5 professional sports. The 3 of us were in 5 sports. Now, I don't know how many other families were able to do that. We had baseball, football, boxing, wrestling, and MMA. And I don't know a lot of families that had that, opportunity. So,
well, I have a question. I wanted to tie in right where you're at, Tony, because my understanding is that the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame is also going to recognize MMA and boxers. Is there any truth to that?
No.
Okay.
No, but that was, but to be telling you this, I'll tell you to you right now. I was looking into starting a Hall of Fame for MMA.
Well, that's why I was asking. I actually heard that.
UFC doesn't have a brick and mortar.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you about that. I did hear that.
I would like to have started. I'll tell you, if I ever got to do something again, I would want to do something like that. I usually keep it close to the breast, but I'm getting older and time's running out on me trying to do that. But if anybody's listening out there and you're able to do it, because there isn't any. You'll be the first one in the world to do it. So go do it. You can go back to Kenny Shamrock in Severson. It's not what's out there now. It isn't UFC now. It's those guys that started it long ago, if you remember, right?
Yeah, sure. Very much like pro wrestling. You know, they were the stalwarts. Mike Messier, final thoughts or comments for Tony Vellano before I let him go?
Well, I just wanted to make sure everyone got the website down right. It's IPWHF.org. I took a look at it. The logo is great. It's a fantastic logo that's available on some
Throwback.
shirts. It's a throwback.
It's a throwback.
Yeah, and then like you said, the featured story, you've got The Rock in this Cassius Clay, which is of course Muhammad Ali's birth name, Cassius Clay tank top that was worn by The Rock in a workout session. So that's up for a raffle, an online raffle. And
you can
Tony,
see The Rock in it.
Oh yeah, you can
The
see
Rock
him
wearing it.
He's doing a double bicep curl, I believe, with the long bar.
Yeah.
And you got a really cool photo there of, it looks like Gorgeous George, perhaps, taking a hip toss from, I'm not sure who he's wrestling, but it looks like Gorgeous George. But I was
want
checking
the story on that?
Yeah, go for it.
There's a story on that. I'm starting the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. Can't tell you how many rounds I had. And people would call me when I first started it and saying, hey, I know I own this guy's likeness. For you to use this likeness, I want $1,000. Nah, I ain't going to give you that. Hey, I own Andre Stein's likeness. If you do this, I'm going to sue you, blah, blah, blah. So here I am starting the very first hall. I don't know why they took that and put that up there, but that was Anthony Rotolo who started the PWHF Hall of Fame's website and stuff. And that picture was our first poster. So what I did was I looked through, I can't tell you how many pictures, and then we came up with this picture, and you can't really see their faces, but like Mike said, you could tell who they are.
Sure.
But you don't see their face if you see the picture, and it's 1947 Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
The first time that Ernie Dusek was in Madison Square Garden.
There's a name from the past. Oh yeah.
Well, that's the other guy with Gorgeous George.
Wow.
And it's Gorgeous George, Ernie Dusek, Madison Square Garden, 47. Can't see their faces. Couldn't be sued. And
that's
those posters are 18 by 20.
That's amazing. Grimlina, one final comment or question for Tony before I let him go?
Yeah, Tony. If you did have a say in who could be inducted, who is your dream inductee, or have you already had them?
Yeah, I'm not going to try to. I'm not going to try to skate. I'm not going to try to skate on this. But when you're officer or your name is out front, you never want to say you like one more than the other, because if some other person hears it and they come, I was asked that question when I was with the PWHF. They said, who's your favorite Hall of Famer? And I said, well, they're all my favorite. They may have taken different, they all climbed Mount Everest. They all stuck the flag on the top. They just took different routes there. And they didn't take all the same route. And they took it and they planted the flag up on top. Now, if I told them who I liked better than the other, this guy may be offended. He may be hurt. When I'm finally out of everything and I'm done with everything, and my opinion really don't mean much, I might tell you, or that might be one of my chapters.
Well, I'll tell you what. You talk about a guy whose life is a story, brother. You got stories and then some. That's one.
Yeah, I do.
It's been a hell of a ride. And Tony, I cannot thank you enough for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I want to give everybody the website, and it's the IWP. It's the
No.
IPWHF.org. The IPWHF.org, International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame.org. And you can go to their Facebook. They have a prominent Facebook page. You can seek them out. I encourage you to join. Find out all the information you need to find out by contacting either Tony Vellano or Seth Turner. They're both highly visible on the page. Make a donation to the IPWHF.org. Easy enough to do. Tony, you have anything else to plug? Any social media?
I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Mike. He's my new friend I haven't met yet.
All right.
Grimlina, I would like you to say hello to Patricia Summerlin for me. I think she was Sunny. Do you know her?
Who?
Because I think she was an original. But she was
Who?
a big
Who's
fan
it
of the
again?
hall.
Which girl?
Patricia Summerlin.
Patricia
I know
Summerlin.
exactly
Oh,
what you're talking about.
Sunny. That's my
Yeah,
girl.
Sunny.
Sunny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you
Oh,
please
here's
say
something
hello
you'll
to-
appreciate about Patricia. And then I've got to go because I got to get on a heating pad for my pinched nerve wrestling injury. Patricia, Sunny, the California girl in Glow, is the only Glow girl to pick me up off my feet.
Wow.
That was an attempt
Wow.
right there.
Even Fiji was like, Grimmy, I can bench this much. I can't get you off your feet. You're gonna have to fly with me.
Now, you have
I
to know
didn't
that
get off my feet.
Grimlina is all of 4 feet tall and
Yeah.
probably
I've
a
seen her.
buck soaking wet.
Yeah.
I was back then. I was 4'9" and 105.
The trick was she was so squirmy, muscular squirmy when she was wrestling back then that you couldn't get a good purchase or a good balance on her, and she could basically shake you off pretty easily.
And I could
Yeah,
plant
she was
myself. And
a
when
little
you
rat
plant
that kept
yourself
moving
properly,
around.
Yeah.
when you plant yourself properly, you can be an immovable object. You've seen it when the guys do that, where they'll bump into somebody and the person doesn't move.
Yeah.
It's all a matter of planting.
Well, Tony, I thank
Well,
you so much.
appreciate it, Ant.
And
I
I will
just
I
hope
will
we
be
got it.
talking to you over the next day or so, and I'll hit you up on Facebook, and I'll give you a call over the next day or so.
I just hope that it was informative and interesting for all our fans.
Incredibly so.
Great.
Absolutely. Oh
Yes.
my God, please, absolutely. So everybody,
All
Tony Vellano, International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. It's on Facebook. It's the IPWHF.org. Make a donation, get information, contact them, be a part of this group. It is, I highly encourage everyone. It really is a worthwhile effort. It's a
Awesome.
labor of love. It really is.
Cool.
All right,
Tony,
guys.
thank you
Take
so
care.
much, my friend. You have a great night. Enjoy.
All right. Thank
Peace
you.
out.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tony.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. Hey, that was good. Grimmy, you came up with some good questions, kid.
Yeah.
It's not my first rodeo.
You know what? You keep saying I'm going to buy you a fucking horse.
Co-host of Cloverleaf Radio for 7 years.
Hey. Okay, so what do you got to plug? Do all your social media. Get it out. Get it out.
I am Sandy Grimlina Manley on Facebook. I'm at Grimlina Glow on Twitter. My Instagram, I think, is 08Sandy. I got nothing to plug because everything I would have plugged has been canceled.
Yeah, me too, kid. All of my appearances have been canceled too, but I had 2
My
scheduled.
appearance is going from the bedroom
month.
to the office in my house. I've been
Yeah.
under house arrest.
Well, I want to thank you and big hunk of Bubba Love for joining us. I appreciate it. Thank you, Grimmy. I'll be in touch with you over the next day or so.
Awesome.
Cool. Talk to y'all
Take care,
later.
you guys. Alan, you got your
Yes, sir.
hands full with that one, kid.
Oh, there you go. Yes, I do.
He's
God
the 300-pound gorilla in the room.
Right?
Yeah.
If I
Grimmy,
can't
take
take
care,
care of it,
Alan.
he can.
Yes, sir.
Take care, my friend.
Take care, man. Take care, Mike.
See you guys. Have a good night.
All right, Mikey. It's just you and me, kid.
Okay.
That was a very interesting, enlightening, and informative conversation. Your thoughts on Tony Vellano?
Well, I was checking out the website, and then the website really does his cause a lot of justice. And I would encourage people, once again, to check out that website. And, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, people were so hung up on Facebook and social media that people were saying, oh, the website is dead. The website is dead. Well, I adamantly disagree with that, Angelo. I feel that if someone doesn't have a good web presence and a good old fashioned, you know, website, then that's like the modern day business card. So
Yeah, you know, it's a good point you bring up. Everybody seems to be using Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That seems to be, for lack of a better term, the new web presence, really.
well, if I could speak on that for just a moment, Angelo.
Sure, please do.
As someone, I run about 4 websites of my own. You know, MikeMessier.com, BloodSugarSidAce.com, DistanceFromAvalon.com, and AvaloniaFestival.com. And running those, I can tell you that it's never been easier, and it continues to get easier and easier with WordPress, GoDaddy. That's what I use. Other people use Wix. And for me, the amount of control that I have running my own website is infinitely more than if I were just using the social media platforms. And
Sure.
I think it's one of those things where it's like with this, 5 or 6 weeks ago, everybody determined we have to go out and buy toilet paper. And suddenly there was a toilet paper shortage for people that really needed it, including
Yeah.
everybody, because
Sure.
everyone's hoarding this toilet paper. And we, you know, so when the word got out, well, websites are dead and Facebook pages are the way to go. If you buy into that, then you're just part of the problem. The reality is, the website gives you more control for your own stuff than relying on another platform. And there's a lot of privacy issues that people don't want to admit to with social media platforms, and that's not
Oh,
something I'm
absolutely.
making up. You know, so I just
Sure.
never bought into companies or individuals that relied strictly on the social media, what they're giving you. You know what I mean? You got to have your own website, in my opinion. In this case, their website, Tony and his associates, IPWHF.org. It's a nice, sleek website. I hope it continues to grow. And I hope that once this horrible thing is over, they'll have all these wonderful events that they put so much work into
Yeah.
planning. And I know that it's very frustrating, Angelo, because here we are, we're speaking about events like they had something with Lanny Poffo, they had a pro wrestling show, all these things that people put energy and effort
Yeah.
into, and because of this god awful virus, everything's on pause. But at the same time, I do want to encourage people to stay vigilant about not interacting socially. Wear those masks. I was out today to buy some groceries, Angelo, and I saw a lot of people not wearing masks, and I got very angry about it
Yeah.
because I'm wearing the mask. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. We went shopping Sunday, and there were quite a bit of people that were just either ignorant or absent malice, whatever the case may be. But you know what? Like you said, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
So I encourage everybody that watching and listening, you know, to maintain social distancing. You know, wear protective, personal protective equipment. You know, it doesn't take much to put a mask on or a pair of latex gloves for a few minutes. You know, that may save somebody's life.
Because
But
the problem is people don't realize if they're carriers, you or I could be a carrier, not feel any symptoms. And
exactly.
these people that are walking around without masks or gloves or something, a neck gaiter, That's what I've been wearing, or a bandana or something over their mouth and nose.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is they could have this stuff but not be showing symptoms. They could bring it to someone they love or someone that you or I love, and
Absolutely, of
it's
course.
kind of selfish and disrespectful for people not to take that consideration into effect.
Absolutely. Well, Mikey, you plugged your website, so let's just plug them again. Where can people reach you? Where can they get a hold of you, see your films?
Well, you've been very good about that, Angelo, and I thank you again. Disregard the Vampire Mike Messier documentary. It's probably the go-to movie that everybody seems to enjoy. It's on YouTube. It's on Vimeo.
I like
Mike, yes, Mike Messier YouTube channel. The new podcast, or video cast. I've been doing video and audio versions, and you've been distributing it on the Wrestling with the Future podcast. Just did Life Lessons Part 1 of Moving. So Moving is episode 3, Part 1.
I
There'll be a part
actually
2.
saw that today, and I thought, you know what? It's funny. I watched that today, and I thought, leave it to Mike Messier to put a perspective on moving.
Yeah,
You know?
well,
But the thing about you, and I want people to watch your videos because you do bring a rather unique perspective. You come from the standpoint not only of a consumer of the world's goods, but a purveyor, which means that you supply the world with goods as well,
sure.
consumable goods, which is in the form of video and audio. You know, the show is aptly named Life Lessons with Mikey Messier.
Well, if anyone has any suggestions for topics, feel free. But I've, what it was, Angelo, was I was driving around last Friday. When I say driving around, I was literally driving around to kill the evening last Friday night. I found myself in a very interesting part of Florida, and it just occurred to me, wow, the sun is out. There's a bench. There was one other person. I think he was fishing who actually did a cameo in the background of the video. But I said, you know what? I want to start this video, and unfortunately, I kind of ran out of storage on my phone, but I will do part 2 to wrap it up. But I think people will like part 1. And the real thought I had for people out there, Angelo, is if you're unhappy where you are geographically, once this thing clears over, maybe it's time for some people to move, to geographically move.
Absolutely. You know what? I actually had that conversation with one of my clients.
Yeah.
Who had been in California for some 30 years. And she said, you know what? I'm ready for a move. I said, well, what's stopping you? Move.
Right.
Go. So I think she's going to end up in Sedona, Arizona, to be honest with you. Well, let me give everybody our plugs. We are Wrestling with the Future, and you can find us for the time being on Facebook /Wrestling with the Future. I may very well take Mike Messier's advice and buy a dedicated website.
Yeah, why not?
Perhaps if it's not taken, I'll buy WrestlingWithTheFuture.com.
That's right.
There you go. You can also wear one of our great T-shirts. We have shirts available. They are in large, extra large, and 2X, Wrestling with the Future T-shirts. You can find them also on our website. You can go to my Facebook page. You'll find all of our videos there and on YouTube at Wrestling with the Future on YouTube. We are on Twitter at Wrestling Future, WRESTLINFUTURE, Wrestling Future on Twitter. And if you want to contact us, you've got show ideas, guest ideas, it's wrestlingwiththefuture@gmail.com. And I have to tell everybody, we have a special show coming up next week, and I want to give everybody a heads up as to what's coming. Next week, I will have myself and one guest. It will be the only show in recent memory that I'll be doing by myself. And I will have a childhood friend of mine on who is the country's foremost Tom Jones tribute artist. We'll be talking entertainment, what the COVID has did to Atlantic City and Las Vegas, how it's all but crippled. In fact, it has crippled the entertainment industry. And we're going to talk about the coronavirus, news, politics, sports. We may get into some conspiracy theory and conjecture. We may even talk about Bigfoot and aliens for all we know. Because with Steve McCoy, you never know where the conversation will lead you. And I'm looking forward to that. We also have, Mikey, in May, some amazing guests coming up. We've got Magnum TA.
Yes, the belly to belly suplex.
Yeah. Magnum TA. Lanny Poffo will be here May 7th.
The genius.
Magnum will be here May 5th. Lanny May 7th. We've got the return of the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant.
Yes.
We will have making his first podcast appearance for us on May the 12th is Flying Brian Pillman Jr. Then he'll come back on May the 26th for part 2 of his interview. We also have making a rare podcast appearance, and I was able to get him because he's a friend of mine, and he said yes. Sam Houston will be joining us. In fact, Mikey, you'll be on that show with me.
Well, I remember Sam Houston had a great bulldog and a great flying clothesline, and he fought Crusher Khrushchev for the vacant Mid-Atlantic title at Starrcade 85, and he got a big surprise pinfall victory over superstar Billy Graham, I believe, in the first match at the first ever Great American Bash.
Yep, sure
and
did.
And he feuded with Black Bart quite a bit, so quite a career from Sam Houston.
Well, it's funny you mention Black Bart because there's a more than a good chance we're going to get Black Bart on the show too.
Well, he's quite a storyteller, and he had a great career.
I hear
he had a great career teaming with Ron Bass as the
oh God, yeah.
And they were called the Long Riders. In addition to
Black
the Irwin
Bart,
brothers.
Ron Bass.
Yes, there was 2 tag teams. Yes. Can I just jump in real quick, Angelo?
Sure.
I believe it was 2 days ago that it was Jeff the Ref's birthday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I want to tie in. I think I know where you're going with it. Jeff the Ref, of course, would have been 43 this Saturday. But it occurred to me that Saturday marks the passing of 2 wrestling icons, legends, giants. And most people have forgotten about them. Saturday marked the passing of Bruno Sammartino.
Yep.
He passed on April 18th. And also, it marks the passing of Wahoo McDaniel.
Wow.
On the same day.
Wow.
And it didn't hit me until afterward that Bruno and Wahoo both passed on Jeff the Ref's birthday.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting stuff.
And what a fitting tribute. It really is. It's I don't look at the downside of that. I always look at the silver lining to the black cloud. It's always a black cloud that Jeff's not here, but we have the silver lining in the form of Mike Messier and Mike Kelleher,
right.
And of course, Mike Murphy, the unholy triad of Mikes.
You're getting
with
quite,
3
quite
Mikes over here.
Quite an army of Mikes there, Angelo.
Actually, I'm stuck with 4 Mikes. Here's my other mic.
Yeah, right. Well, it reminded me. I wanted to say that his sister, Jeff's sister, had a real nice tribute to her brother Jeff, and
sure did.
And it occurred to me, on a side note, a friend of mine had also passed away at the age of 45 a couple of years ago. So the 3rd anniversary of my buddy Joe Jaffo's death is coming up tomorrow. And anytime, folks, you think about people that die before their time, it gets disconcerting. But we try to look at those silver linings, like you said, Angel.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, Mikey, it's been another great episode, another great week. I will see you. When will I see you? Tomorrow, right?
I think so. I think there's another episode coming up right away.
Karen McDaniel tomorrow night.
Part 2.
Part 2 with Karen McDaniel tomorrow night. And so I will see you. On behalf of Mike, the Movie Maker Messier, I'm Psychic Medium Angelo. Happy wrestling, everybody. We'll see you next time.